how well do the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and Toyota bZ4X stack up? Well, I've got both of these all-electric SUVs, so let's do a very quick comparison test to see what they do well and what could be improved. So this is a 2023 Hyundai Ioniq 5 limited all-wheel drive model, a much higher trim level than the Toyota we'll be testing later in this video. The bZ4X is only a front-wheel drive version of that car. Anyway, I love the design of the Ioniq 5 here. It looks like nothing else you can buy today. Very retro, futuristic styling. It looks almost like something that would have been designed in the 1980s. Very distinctive. We have standard 20-inch wheels on this example that have sort of a basket weave pattern to them that I think look great as well. And then of course the middle of these rims is sort of flattened, likely to improve vehicle aerodynamics. Up front we have standard LED headlights, daytime running lamps, and then at the back of the vehicle, standard LED tail lamps. Always nice to have. There's also this very interesting trim that runs underneath the lamps and the grille section here that lights up with these lines, makes a very unique pattern at night. Again, looks super interesting. Now there are a couple things I don't care for about this EV, and one of them is right up front. There's not much of a frunk in the Ioniq 5. You do get a small storage cubby under the hood that's large enough to keep your carry-out warm or maybe store the charging cable, but that is unfortunately about it. One other thing I don't care for are these exterior door handles. Yes, they do retract. They are power operated. They give you a very sleek look. However, if it's raining or wet outside, your hand does tend to slip off when you go to get inside. Well, matching its exterior, the Ioniq 5's cabin is absolutely lovely. It's beautifully designed. The materials used are great. These front seats are super comfortable. And then, of course, the back seat has loads of room for 6-foot-tall passengers as well. Just look at all of that space. As you can see, though, the overall design of this interior is much more conventional than what you get in the bZ4X, which you could almost describe as looking kind of alien. Anyway, up on the dashboard, we have a pair of screens, each measuring 12.3 inches, one for the digital instrument cluster, another, of course, for the infotainment system. And I've got to say, this is a super responsive and fairly intuitive multimedia array. Definitely one of my preferred infotainment systems that's available in the automotive industry today. Now, a couple features do set the Ioniq 5's cabin apart from other vehicle interiors. One of them is, in higher trim models, there's an extendable leg bolster that's great for, I don't know, you want to take a nap on your lunch break or something, or just kick back and relax while you're DC fast charging on a road trip. This is very nice to have. Plus, we have a sliding center console. Now, it doesn't move all that far, as you can see, about 6 inches or so. However, this would be great for shorter drivers. When they're closer to the steering wheel, they want the armrest up just a little bit closer as well, so that should be very nice to have. Underneath my feet, we have a 77.4 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery pack, and that's slightly larger than what you get in the bZ4X, and it provides a little bit more range. You get up to 266 miles on a charge in this all-wheel drive Ioniq 5. Now, normally we like to see 300 miles in EVs because it gives you a little bit of wiggle room, but 266 is really still pretty good. That all-wheel drive system also provides a robust 320 horsepower and 446 pound-feet of torque, so you are never wanting for acceleration in the all-wheel drive Ioniq 5. This is a very well-performing vehicle, and it's also extremely quiet, it's comfortable, and honestly, I don't have a lot to complain about. Hyundai typically does a very good job, and the Ioniq 5 is just another excellent product. Shifting gears, so to speak, although EVs typically don't have multi-speed transmissions, but you get what I mean. Shifting gears, this is the 2023 Toyota bZ4X. This is an XLE front-wheel drive model. They have XLE and Limited, so this is the lower-end version, and of course, only front-wheel drive compared to the Ioniq 5, which has all-wheel drive. It's a bit of a disadvantage, though this is significantly more affordable, which we will talk about in just a few minutes. Anyway, design. Very adventurous looking all-electric SUV here, where the Hyundai is sort of 1980s inspired. This could almost be an alien mothership. There's a lot going on with this vehicle, and it's hard to see on camera, but there's almost a beak to the front end right here, which is a bit unusual. Toyota, of course, known for its adventurous designs, and this fits in with the brand's broader lineup. Flanking the front end, I hesitate to call this a grille, but flanking the front end, standard LED headlamps. We have LED taillights at the rear. Adding some visual pizzazz, dark gray trim on the front of the vehicle. There's a piece up on the hood as well. The roof is dark, and then we have some dark accents at the rear to just liven things up. I think it goes very well, of course, with this bright red paint job. Underneath the hood, one thing I don't like, however, where the Hyundai had a small front trunk, a storage cubby, a front cubby, a frubby, if you will. There's nothing but hoses and wires underneath the bZ4X hood. Not having a front trunk, no, it is not the end of the world, though front trunks are certainly nice features to have. Moving along the side of the vehicle, a few things to talk about. This particular bZ4X has 18-inch, I'm going to call them polymer alloy wheels. Can you hear that? This is a plastic wheel cover. Not ideal, not necessarily very premium, but in the long run, if you do bend or damage a wheel, this should be much cheaper to replace, I would think, than a much larger, fancier wheel. So long term, this is a much smarter solution. Another thing I love, charging port door right here on the driver's side front fender. You push it, it pops open, and I adore this. This is an amazing feature as well. They have little hinged doors that cover off, protect the sockets from the elements. This is a much superior design to what some other automakers use, where they have little plastic plugs that block off the outlet. So very well done, Toyota. This is much better. And then, of course, one other thing of note, the bZ4X has conventional door handles, unlike the Ioniq 5 where they retract. Everybody knows how to use these. You just pull on them and the door opens. It's dead simple. I'm a simple guy, and while the Ioniq 5 door handles are much cooler, I think I prefer this solution in the long run. Well, it's immediately obvious. Sitting in this Toyota, its interior is quite different looking. We can see this is much more isolating and cocoon-like, opposed to the Ioniq 5 that's sort of very open and free-flowing. And I've got to tell you, I do like both design themes. We also have some interesting fabric-like material up on the dashboard. It adds visual interest, and it's got a nice texture to it, so a nice design choice there. Now, the bZ4X, unfortunately, does not have a glove box, nothing here on the passenger side of the dashboard, although the center console is very generously sized. You've got a little storage cubby up here with your wireless charging pad. There's some space under here, and then, of course, storage underneath the center armrest, so it's not a total loss. Yes, a glove box would be nice to have, but you do have other places to store your items. As for the infotainment screen, it measures 12.3 inches, and it seems to work fairly well. Pretty standard Toyota stuff, which is a good infotainment system, so nothing to complain about there. Up on the dashboard, we have a 7-inch sort of combination head-up display / digital instrument cluster. They've kind of combine these two features into one. They've killed two birds with one stone, if you will, and that's a great idea in theory. However, in practice, this isn't quite perfect, because when the steering wheel is adjusted the way I want it, the rim is actually blocking almost half of the screen. So to see it all, I've got to lower the column down like that, which is kind of silly, so they might have to go back to the drawing board with this feature. But still, it's a good idea. They just have to refine it a little bit. As for comfort, the front seats are very nice. This is a 6-way manual driver's seat. And then, of course, the back bench is very spacious. 6-foot-tall passengers will have no trouble getting comfortable in the bZ4X, and neither will folks in these front bucket seats, because this particular example has the $500 optional cold weather package, which gets you heated front chairs as well as a heated steering wheel. So we have a single electric motor in this vehicle that powers the front wheels and provides 201 horses and 196 pound-feet of torque. Now, neither of those numbers sound very impressive, and they do trail the Ioniq 5 all-wheel drive by a significant margin, although this bZ4X moves very well. You roll on the throttle, this vehicle scoots. It'll practically break the tires loose on dry pavement, so don't let those relatively low output numbers fool you. Now, when it comes to battery capacity, we have a 71.4 kilowatt hour pack, in this bZ4X that provides an estimated range of 252 miles, which is a good number, though not even as good as what you get in the all-wheel drive Ioniq 5, so range is definitely not one of this Toyota's strong suits. That battery pack does, however, DC fast charge at up to 150 kilowatts, which is a good kind of industry standard figure these days in 2023, though of course it is not a segment leading performance, not by a long shot. All-wheel drive versions of the bZ4X, though, they do have a little bit more horsepower, 214 ponies, so not a big difference between front drive and all-wheel drive, though there is one major change between these models. All-wheel drive versions of this Toyota do have a completely different battery pack that's about 73 kilowatt hours, though it only DC fast charges at 100 kilowatts, so it is super slow, way behind the Ioniq 5, which will do about 235 in our testing. So very good performance in this bZ4X, and I've got to say, it feels a little bit sportier than the Ioniq. The steering, I think, is a little bit sharper. Yes, there's a touch of body roll in corners, but the ride is slightly firmer, the steering is a little bit crisper, and overall this vehicle does drive quite well. All right, let's talk pricing and then wrap up this very quick comparison test. As it sits, our Ioniq 5 checks out for $58,005, which is pretty expensive. The Toyota, in comparison, is significantly more affordable. This one goes for just $44,409, again, including destination and delivery, making it about 14 grand less expensive than the Hyundai, which of course is a huge difference. Now, you are giving up a bit of performance. The DC fast charging performance is less, and of course, the range is reduced. So keep that in mind. But overall, my preference is for the Ioniq 5. I think this vehicle looks better. I prefer the interior, and you can't argue with that DC fast charging performance. However, there's still a lot to like about the front drive bZ4X. The performance is fantastic. The numbers on paper don't look that great, but this vehicle absolutely scoots. And if you're shopping for one of these Toyotas, I think the front drive bZ4X is absolutely the one to get. Next up, watch my full review of the Kia Niro EV by clicking right over here. This all-electric crossover is an excellent value, and it's a pretty good vehicle too.